The video game The Callisto Protocol was created by Striking Distance Studios and released by Krafton in the year 2022. The narrative of the game centers on Jacob Lee, who is incarcerated in a facility on the Jovian moon Callisto and must battle inmates who have been afflicted by an unidentified sickness while learning the facility's sinister secrets. The main adversaries of the Callisto Protocol are the Biophage. They are people who have been altered by the Biophage pathogen. These Biophage come in different shapes and sizes and with different capabilities. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video to explore the different types of Biophage Jacob encounters in the game. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Warning. Anomaly detected.
Big Mouth. Big Mouth is a humanoid creature with two gaping maws full of sharp teeth. This creature has numerous legs, which they may utilize to move quickly about the region, and they also possess the ability to conceal themselves by cloaking, which renders them invisible. In an encounter, one clamped onto Jacob's head and started shaking it around before tearing most of his skull off. We saw how well the mouths of this creature worked when it did this. Big mouths cannot be eliminated covertly. They spew projectiles towards Jacob as their primary method of assault. If you manage to blast off their head, they will have no choice but to use melee attacks against you. Their melee strikes only use a one-swipe combination after blowing off their heads, allowing you to evade and instantly follow up with your own strike. For this opponent type, which frequently attempts to block your melee swings, getting the upgrade for the baton to break an adversary's arms is useful. Jacob may also use the gravity restraint projector to pick up these foes and fling them into surrounding environmental dangers for easy executions. Two-headed brute. A potent biophage variation is the two-headed brute. This enormous creature has undergone extensive mutations, giving the impression that two distinct persons have been merged together using the weird meaty substance. This adversary is the main antagonist in the colony. In the latter section of Chapter 6, Jacob comes upon the monster on a moving transport platform. Once all the adversaries have been vanquished, the two-headed boss battle will start. Concentrating on one head at a time will be the best course of action here. The two-headed boss's potency will be cut in half if one of its heads is destroyed. It is advised to use the riot gun to aim and fire at one head for this to occur. Additionally, the player should attack this two-headed behemoth from a safe distance. It will make several melee assaults at the player, all of which the player may parry. The player can even try to reload the riot gun while running away and hiding behind the crates. It will crouch to its knees whenever one of its heads has sustained enough damage. At this point, the player must close in on the two-headed beast and use their stun baton. This will weaken it by removing the injured head. To remove the other head, the player needs to perform the same procedure a second time.
Thank you. At first I thought this was a curse, but then I realized it is a gift.
Alpha Ferris. It is revealed just before the game ends that during the previous epidemic there was an alpha biophage, someone who could merge with the virus while retaining their mental capabilities. With this knowledge, it is made clear that Ferris is the new alpha, having avoided just turning into a mindless biophage by merging with the illness. According to Dr. Caitlin Mahler, the only way to treat Danny is to take a sample from the alpha. However, during the last fight, Ferris turns into the alpha biophage, where he transforms into a giant abomination of flesh. He develops a large hump on his back, with tentacles and mouths protruding from it, and each of his fingers transforms into individual arms. The mouth on his back also enables him to spit projectiles like other spitter biophages. The Blind. The Blind assumes the form of a body that resembles a skeleton in certain ways. It is exceedingly emaciated, has a decaying body, no eyes, and a mouth totally covered in a root-like substance. Plants are sprouting on its shoulders and arms. They do not need light and instead rely on the sounds the player produces to discover them, because they have been kept away in darkness for decades. Because of this, the player can conceal themselves and may entirely avoid them. These creatures are not required to be fought by the player, and there may occasionally be too many of them for close combat. The player should avoid them by sneaking past them to save their health and ammo. In order to create a diversion with noise, the player can also pull in things with their glove and hurl them. These adversaries need a lot of damage to be destroyed. Spitters. A spitter is a tall biophage that resembles the fusion of two individuals. They spew projectiles at Jacob that resemble either tiny larvae or an acidic substance. But the player may utilize these projectiles wisely, since they can harm the other biophage as well. From a distance, they generally don't threaten anyone and are more bothersome than anything. The player can shoot off their head if they want them to quit spitting at them. It won't be killed, but it will cease spitting and engage in some physical combat, because it is a bit larger than the typical zombie. Jacob should be on the lookout for its long arms and tentacles that will try to ensnare him. Long neck monster. The long neck monster thrusts its long snake-like neck and head out from behind a covering. The gamer won't be able to anticipate this biophage with the long neck. The creature grabs its prey by the neck and tries to drag them inside, where they will be slain. These creatures wait for a person to enter their territory undetected before charging out and seizing the player. All of these creatures may be defeated by continuously stabbing them before they can drag the player inside. Since players can't see these creatures coming until they cling onto them, they serve as some of the game's most potent jump scares. Since they are prevalent throughout the jail from the beginning, the development into this species is interesting and doesn't appear to take any longer than the normal monster. Crawlers. Biophages known as crawlers crawl on the ground and explode when the player is nearby or when they die. Due to the substantial growths on their backs, these monsters tend to keep close to the ground. Usually, there isn't much time between when it sees the player and when it explodes. It travels so quickly that the player sometimes has just seconds to respond. Crawlers are incredibly weak and can be killed by any weapon in the game with only one shot. But before the player kills them, they need to make sure to preserve their distance, since they deliver damage in an area when they die. Larvae. The larvae are the newly formed biophage crawling across the floor in search of a host to infect. In an attempt to enter through the lips of its target, it throws itself upon the victim before infecting the host. This creature doesn't appear in the game until the player has ventured a bit deeper inside the jail. When there are just a few of them, they don't cause much of a problem, but when there are enough of them, they can be challenging to control as they swarm at the player's feet. If the player doesn't want to stomp and shoot every single one of them, it is best to seek explosives. Zombie. Immediately after escaping their cell, players will run into this monster first, as the newly infected inmates and guards look for victims. The quantity of them chasing people in the backdrop in the early stages of the game is an indication of how quickly and violently this evolution advances. They are strong enough to easily rip the protagonist's arms and face off. As was already said, the player would run across this creature right away after leaving their cage. Its strength and speed are about average compared to the previous evolutions, and they are simple to defeat one at a time. If there are more than a few, it would be best to try to slip by them rather than being surrounded and forced to defend yourself from several angles. Big boys. Despite being bigger and needing a few more strikes to eliminate, these bloated biophages are no more dangerous than regular zombies. The player will have to move carefully or dispatch the creatures as rapidly as possible, since these bloated biophages frequently come with other tiny zombies. Despite being a little bigger than the usual foes, the players still need to defeat these inmates. The player only needs to keep hitting them with their baton or firing shots at them with their shotgun. Additionally, the player has the option of placing them in dangerous environments, which would quickly eliminate them. Tentacle mutated creature. Although this is true for all biophage, players will initially come across these typical freshly changed monsters. The monster will begin to develop tentacles from its chest after taking enough damage, and then it will pull off its own arms and grow new, sharp appendages in their place. This appears to be the creature's desperate attempt to damage itself severely and expose a vulnerability. Once the player has advanced past a certain point and has inflicted enough damage on them, this will happen to every biophage they face. They will, however, instantly perish if the player shoots them in the tentacles before they have had a chance to change. Additionally, the player needs to watch out for dead biophage that sprout tentacles and come back to life.
Colonist, known as Subject 0, demonstrated a unique ability to synthesize the biophage, to control it.
Yeah, I heard in the recordings.
Subject 0. Jacob and Danny learned that the UJC had destroyed the whole colony in Arcas after suffering an epidemic akin to the one that struck Black Iron. Additionally, they discovered a lab with a deadly alien creature that the original Arcas miners unintentionally discovered. However, there was one biophage, Subject 0, who managed to retain his intelligence before being killed by security personnel. The UJC had taken the alien's larvae and started testing it on humans after realizing its potential for accelerated evolution. Subject 0 had enhanced emotions and was far more powerful than the other biophages. Marvelous verdict. The Callisto Protocol is one of the very few sci-fi horror games that manage to scare the living daylights out of the players. The game, with all its different biophages, is very engaging and always keeps the players on their toes. The jump scares are enough to make anyone flinch. Overall, it's a fantastic game with its gore and its otherworldly biophages. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.